What's up everyone, this is Trendkill Toys. Today I'm taking a look at the new Jada toys, Cammy and Guile from their Street Fighter 2 line. And I have to do both of these characters in one video because when I was younger and I saw Street Fighter 2 and the other Street Fighter games, I always associated these two characters together. They both kind of had that military style, so in my mind they were always like on the same team or something. And it's ironic both of these characters came on the same wave, so in my mind it makes sense to do these two figures in one review. And with that out of the way, let's get right into the figures. First, I'm going to start with Cammy. When it comes to the style of this particular figure, not really a fan of the style that they went with. It's kind of like in between the old school design and kind of a modern. Not really a big fan of that. I do think the face sculpt is okay. She's kind of making a weird expression, but she did make an expression like this in some of the concept art and things like that in the game as well. It does kind of have a cartoony look to it. Most of the figures in this line kind of have that vibe to them. It's not really a big deal. I actually prefer more of a cartoony look than a realistic look, because if it was realistic it would just look like somebody that's dressed up like Cammy, and that would not be good. One thing that I never really liked with Cammy's design, especially from Street Fighter 2, is these green markings. I guess they're supposed to be like camouflage, but it doesn't look like camouflage at all. It just looks like random green paint splotches on her legs. So I might try removing that. I know I've seen a custom where somebody did remove that and they made it look more like the Street Fighter 5 Cammy. So obviously if you look at art from the old Street Fighter games, Cammy had a much more leaner look, a muscular leaner look than what we see here in the figure, and I would have preferred that leaner look. This figure is kind of like, she has a higher body fat percentage, which I guess is more like how she's depicted in some of the recent Street Fighter games, which is not a good thing in my opinion. I prefer that leaner look. I think it makes more sense. For example, the musculature in the arms, not really visible, and her shoulders have these peaks at the top of them, which is not really a good thing for a female figure, especially when you get down to the legs. There are some sculpted muscles down here, but it's very subtle, and when you look at the art and the sprites, her legs did not have this much body fat, especially when you get to the back of the figure. I'm going to show it briefly for the purpose of showing you what I'm talking about. The sculpt of the glute is way too big for a character like Cammy, influenced by some of the modern interpretations of this character, which I think that's more of a trendy way to design female characters now. Not really any substance to it, other than the fact that they're trying to attract immature people who have no self-control to their games. So I would have preferred a leaner look to the legs and the glutes here, and then I've also would have preferred a little bit more coverage on the bottom of the swimsuit. It does differ between what game you're looking at and what concept art for each game you're looking at. It is a little bit different, and I might end up just removing the skin tone paint that's on this softer piece of plastic, because the paint is already starting to chip right there. And that goes into another problem that I have with these figures. Anytime there's like this rubbery, softer plastic material, the paint chips very easily. So for example, here is Ken, and on the front of the tie around his gi, you can see the paint is like easily chipping off of that. So I don't know what's up with that. Like, are they not putting sealer, or the sealer they're using is not good? Is this like where they're cutting corners or cutting costs? This is why the figures are, I think, $25. Because they're skipping out on sealing the paint on these kind of parts. But anyways, might end up making this whole lower section green, and maybe shaving down some of the plastic on her glutes. But besides that, now we'll move on to the accessories. She got this energy effect. I think this is mostly with her kick move. Not very familiar with her moveset. Didn't play her that much. I did, not as much as some other characters, so I'm not really familiar with her moveset. But I think she does have kind of like a drop kick. 4 hands in total, 2 chopping hands and 2 fists. Would have liked more hands, obviously, but it seems like the thing that they're doing with these figures is just having like 4 hands and that's it. She also has an alternate screaming head, and I did heat up this head and removed her beret. Later, towards the end of the video, I'll show you that you can put different hats on her. That's it for accessories. Now we'll get into the actual figure. Not really a big fan of how they do the neck joint here. Small ball joint into an even smaller ball joint that goes into the neck, so you don't get a whole lot of range out of that bottom one. You get most of the range from the base of the neck and then also from the top of the head. So with that combined, the figure doesn't look all the way down, and that's the reason why, because they didn't really design it that well, and can't really look up all the way either for the same reason. But you can get a lot of tilt out of that, and obviously swivel. Also, her hair tails are articulated. They just have a swivel, and you can swap them out with the other ones. Are slightly different. Would have preferred if they had like a bendy wire, like maybe just one set with bendy wires in it. Then at the shoulders, Despite the shoulders being sculpted the way that they are, you can still get horizontal from the shoulders, so that's nice. And they also swivel, and then bicep swivel as well. Double jointed elbow, get decent range out of that. No swivel on the gauntlet, but you do get a swivel at the wrist and a hinge. Then the upper torso joint, obviously you get a swivel, and then you get a slight bend forward, not a whole lot, a little bit more going back. Then at the bottom, you get more going forward, even more going back, a little bit of a gap showing down there, and then both combined gets you a decent amount. It's not as much as some people make it out to be. Some people say it's like you get crazy articulation in the abdomen, but most of that is going to be going backwards, not really a whole lot going forwards, unless you're adding the leg articulation in there. But that's not strictly talking about the abdomen articulation. We're talking about the abdomen articulation. And then also you get a swivel, and both can tilt side to side. Then the legs, they do go back. And here's another problem that I have with having this soft rubber piece here, is that you can go back, but when are you ever going to go back? Because that looks really ugly right there. Like, I'm never going to use that in a picture or on display. I'm never going to move the leg this far back. So having this piece be this soft rubber is kind of does more harm than good, in my opinion. First of all, because the paint chips easily. Second of all, you're not going to need that extra articulation because it just looks ugly from the front. So I think that's kind of an L in my opinion. But you can move it forward very well. Also outward, which is also nice. A little bit of gapping up there. Second problem with the hip joints here is that it's kind of a weak structure. The joint is not very strong, and so when you go to bend the leg down, it kind of pulls on the joint, and it stresses it. You kind of have to help it to move it back into position. I'll just briefly look down here for a second. You can see, it's just not very strong. Would have liked if it was a little bit more solid. But maybe if it was solid, it would have been more brittle and it would have broken easily. I don't know, maybe that's why they go with the softer joints. Thigh swivel, double jointed knees, pretty good. Boot swivel, just a swivel. And then ankle hinge goes forward and back. And then it also swivels on that. So in terms of articulation, not too bad. Could have been a little bit better here and there, but it's pretty much what you expect from this line so far. I think most of the figures have been good. There's been some slight negatives here and there, but for the most part, I think it is pretty good. And here's what the accessory looks like. Now I'll move on to the next figure, which is Guile. Again, we start with the design, then we'll get into the articulation. So Guile, I've always liked Guile's design. I've always been a fan of him. I've played him in pretty much all the Street Fighter games. He's not my favorite, but he's probably like in my top 5 Street Fighter characters. So in terms of design, I think this is a very good design, very good translation of the Street Fighter 2 style and outfit into action figure form. The green tank top is textured. His pants are also textured. Also the camo is pretty cool. Would have liked it to be just a little bit darker, but I think in the original game it was kind of bright and kind of saturated. Maybe a dark wash would make it look a little better. These are pretty cool pants. Some big pockets on them. Wish I had pants like this in real life. It also kind of reminds me of the animated series from the mid-90s, the Street Fighter animated cartoon. American flag tattoos, very cool. The necklace is also a very good execution of that. Dog tags and the necklace and everything. There's texture on this flat top, which is, I don't know, it looks kind of gross. Makes it look like his head is a sponge, but I know the Storm Collectibles was a lot worse, and it just looks nasty. This is not too bad. I would have preferred if it was actually flat. I think that would have been the way to go. Now again to the articulation. Ball joint at the top, another ball joint at the bottom, and it's the same size as the one up here. So you're going to get a little bit more range out of that than you would on the Cammy figure. So he is able to look all the way down and further up, which is nice. And they should construct the female necks like this too. I don't know why they're not. Maybe they don't think there's enough room. I think there's enough room though. And then tilt. And then of course swivel. The shoulders, and also forgot to mention, the musculature is okay. It's decent. A little bit soft looking though. Would have liked to see more striations, like in the shoulders and in the chest. Give him more of a ripped look. Swivel, hinge out, only horizontal. The butterfly joints go back that far, go forward, not a whole lot. Then swivel on the bicep. Double joint elbows work pretty good. Then a swivel and hinge. Then in the torso, get a little bit of range going back, a little bit going forward. Lower torso, get more range going forward and more going back, and then both combined. Again, not crazy range, but it's not bad. And of course you can swivel, tilt side to side, and then with the hips you don't have the same problem like with the Cammy figure. These joints are a lot more thicker. You don't have to worry about stressing the joint in there. And they go up that far. They go back a little bit, not a whole lot. Goes out horizontal. Swivel. Double jointed knees. Boot swivel. Ankle hinge. I do have a problem with this ankle hinge right here. It does kind of stress when you move the foot. So if they just fixed the quality of their joints here and there, I think that would make this figure a lot more better. And especially when it comes to swiveling the joint. You see it doesn't really swivel, it kind of fights back. So that's pretty worrying. It might lead to some, stress in the joint, possibly ripping up the joint maybe. But that's it for the figure. And then with accessories, he has his signature comb, pretty good detail. He has an alternate head where he's frowning, a little bit more angrier. Would have liked the yelling head sculpt. I don't know if he ever yells though, but it's not too bad. It's just kind of too close to his neutral head sculpt in my opinion. And then he has 4 hands. He has 2 fists, one for holding his comb or a thumbs up, then another kind of posing hand. Then finally he does come with his sonic boom energy effect, which is really cool. I would have liked for this to have been like solid plastic with some shading on it. Not really a big fan of this translucent style that they're going with, but it's not too bad. You can tell what it is when you see it. You can pretty much get him into the pose. I think the stand needs to go a little bit higher though. Now we'll get into some of the customization and then also some comparisons. Like I mentioned earlier, you can put different helmets on her. Then you could do a few head swaps with Guile, Marvel Select Captain America unmasked head, the rare time that he has his hair down. Here's a bulking Ken, or Ken on trend. The Bandai Namco King head from Tekken. Then one of my favorite things to do is put different clothes on them. So I'll just show you a few different outfits you can do if you have a bunch of 112 clothes. This one's pretty cool. Kind of similar to what he wears in Street Fighter 6, I think. He's got the sweater with the cut-off sleeves. Here's Guile again. He's got a poncho and a shotgun this time. This also looks pretty sick. Here's Cammy. She's got pants, jacket, shirt, scarf. I mean, you can't hate that. Jacket's kind of big, it's not too bad. But like, you can't hate that. Like, how can you hate this? I did have to take her boots off to put the pants on. Here's Doomer Guile, and the hood does not fit over his head, obviously, but he looks fine even without the hood. That's pretty sick. And then again, Cammy, different pants, different jacket. You could even put a skirt on there. And here's where the green, things on the legs become a little bit more distracting when you're trying to put regular clothes on her. So definitely probably remove those. Look, I could spend all day here trying on different outfits and stuff, but we're adults, we got places to be, we got responsibilities. Let's get into some size comparisons, and I'll get the heck out of here. Your size comparison with Guile, we got Guile, Kazuya, Bandai Namco, and Ken, also from Jada Toys. Fig Arts Sakura, Custom Marvel Legends Dr. Doom, Jack Specific Homer Simpson, and Bandai Namco Tekken King. Here's Cammy and Guile, Marvel Legends Iron Man, Marvel Legends Daredevil, Custom Marvel Legends Red Skull, WWE Mattel Elite Hogan. This is the retired version. And then Masterverse He-Man. Anyways, guys, that's all I got to say about these figures. You let me know what you think about this review, about some of the things I said. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Really good figures, really fun to play with, really fun to put clothes on and stuff like that, customize. And yep, that's it. I'll see you in the next review.
I have an idea. This young one will be my young one. This cornflake will be my boy. Yes, hey. Show the boy back to his old room. There he can rest, maybe have a snack. You like some cornflakes? Young one.
Oh, this is delicious! This is...
Guess you won't be needing those tapes I made for you. You want me to get rid of them? Those tapes I made for you. You want me to get rid of them? You want me to...
Don't be hasty. Not until I see those street fighters pummeled to dust, which should be any moment now.
She's got pants, jacket, shirt, scarf,